Just in case you're new here, I'm Del and this is Dishes with Del. Here on this channel we often do a step-by-step tutorial of how to make something, so it's often quite in-depth and yeah, I just want you guys to learn something. I often take it quite slow so that you can see everything that's going on.
Having said all that, we're going to get into it. We're going to make today an Asian noodle salad. It's going to take about 15 minutes. Let's get cooking.
The ingredients. A carrot, better looking than some carrots that I've had recently. A cucumber. I actually grew this in my garden, which is exciting. Here's a whopper. Red onion, red pepper, garlic, chilli. Some herbs. I've got some coriander. I've actually grown some Thai basil this year in the garden and some mint. It's nice to have a bit of freshness. And we're also going to need some noodles. I've just got some rice noodles here. You could use the really thin ones, the vermicelli, or yeah, whatever you've got in the cupboard. If you've got egg noodles, use egg noodles. I also had some frozen edamame just hanging about in the freezer, so I thought, why not? You can go in there too. And it's nice to have a bit of crunch. We've got some peanuts, just to go on the top to give it a little bit of, you know, something fancy. And just 2 chunks of some white fish. If you have some salmon, or maybe you want to make this meat salad, you could put in it maybe some beef, chicken, or if you're veggie, put some tofu on it. Whatever you have, you know, that's where it's always great to be customizing things. I've talked about it before, but the best way to make a quick meal, efficient meal, is to kind of have all your prep ready done before you go. So in this case, the 2 things that are going to take the longest to make are the noodles, because in my case they need to cook for 4 minutes. We also need to sear the fish off, and then we'll make the salad. The salad's going to be cold, so we can get all of this prepped and ready in the bowl. And then when the noodles are cooked, we can add it to the salad and toss it all together. And while that's sitting for 5 minutes, just to get all them flavors combined, we can seal off the fish. So having said that, I'm going to get a pot of water on. We're going to get it boiling, and we're going to get these noodles cooked. Water is boiling, and whenever you're cooking anything in boiling water, it's always a good idea to give it a little bit of a season, a bit of salt, and then we're going to put the noodles in. See you in 4 minutes. While the noodles are on cooking, we can prep our salad. So we're just going to take a bowl, and we're just going to put everything in here once we've prepped it. There's one of 2 ways that we can do things. We can either chop them up, or we can peel them. So we're going to do a little bit mixture of both. It's nice to have a little bit of a different texture and crunch and all them kind of things. So it's nice. Plus as well, you get to learn some knife skills. If you have any questions about the things that we're making, always just put it in the comments section down below. Anyway, back to the cooking. With the amount of noodles that I've cooked, it's probably going to be enough for 2 people. So it's great for either one person's dinner, and then you can have it the next day for lunch. We're only going to need about half the red pepper. So as you can see, you have the core in the middle here, and I just like to cut it off. It's good to put it on a flat surface again, and then we can just cut here. So the core's still in there. We can put this in the fridge and keep it for later. And then the peppers, I like to julienne, fancy French name, but it basically means a nice fine cut. So tip of the knife, and then keep your fingers away. You roll with your knife, and you make fine slivers, like that. Nice and fine, but crunchy for the salad. Now the cucumber, this is a big guy. I quite like to have some big chunks. Again, I'm probably only going to use half. I'm just going to cut them into chunks. We'll just kind of, you know, just kind of chop it up so that we've got some nice big chunks. And then for the carrot, all I'm going to do is just take that very top bit off. And for this, again, just a different texture. I'm just going to give it a peel. So we're going to have these nice long ribbons of carrot. And And again, you know, it's all about how much you want in there. If you like carrot more than you like cucumber, put more carrot in there. If you don't like capsicum, peppers, as I would call them because I'm from the UK, then just don't put them in there. That'll be enough of that. And then we're going to take the onion. I like to use a red onion for this, or if I had some spring onions, maybe some spring onions, but probably a red or spring. White onions are just a bit harsh, and we're going to use slices for this. So here, at this back end of the root, we're just going to go in at an angle and cut away like that. So you have this angular piece of onion which you've taken away, because the root will keep it all together, and we want it to be nice and fine and divided up through the salad. Make sure you keep them out the way. You're going to make like a guard with your, what do you call this bit? If anyone knows, let me know. But your bit of finger between your two knuckles. And then, if you're not confident with your knife, just take it really slow. As you get slightly more confident, you can go a little bit faster. But it's really nice to have fine slices of onion. Once I get to about here in the onion, I decide, is this enough or is it not? I'm going to say probably enough. In go the onions. Here's the edamame, and these were the frozen ones, so what we're going to do is just pop them out the shell so that we can add them to our salad. Ooh, my eyes are starting to water from the onion. And that's your edamame beans. Again, if you don't have them, don't go out and buy them. You know, they're expensive. It's only because I had some in the fridge, in the freezer. Add them. And then the herbs. For the herbs, I like to we're just going to tear them up. Take them off the stalks first of all, like this. Oh, the coriander stalks, they can go in. And the basil, we'll take them all off the stalk. And then we'll add them to the salad, but I'm just going to break them up. You know, some of these leaves are small. It's super nice to just have big, chunky bits in there. Add all them nice bits. Then the stalks, you can just get rid of. I've got some honey roasted nuts that I had in the cupboard. Again, if you had some salted peanuts or maybe some cashew nuts or no nuts at all. It's nice to just have a little bit of crunch in there, but we're not going to add these to the salad now. These are going to be at the end for a garnish. But we are just going to give them a little chop. Not too fine, nice and chunky. We'll add them into our dish. Eee, that was good. And we'll save them for when we garnish. Whatever noodles you're using, just follow the instructions as to how it says to cook them, as this is going to be a cold salad, so it's nice to have them all ready to go before you do everything else. Our noodles have had 4 minutes, so we're just going to pour them off. And we're just going to run some cold water on them because you want to stop the cooking. Careful, they'll be hot. You don't need to cook them down all the way, because if they're just a tiny weeny bit warm, they'll take on that sesame flavour from the oil a little bit better. And then I'll just sit the colander on top of there so any excess water can drain. A tiny little drizzle of sesame oil. Maybe that was a bit much. Nah, it's all good. And then just coat it on all of the noodles. And they're ready. And now we've got all these salad in here all ready to go. We're going to add the noodles. And they can just sit in there, and we'll just dress it when we're coming to serve. For the dressing, this is literally going to be the smallest amount of sesame oil, as we've already dressed the noodles when they came out of the hot water and we cooled them down in a little bit. It's just that there's a tiny little bit of oil so that everything can kind of be bound and stick nicely to the other veg. To make the dressing, we're going to use 4 ingredients: sesame oil, fish sauce, some brown sugar, and some lime juice and zest. If you haven't got a fresh lime, don't worry about it. Just use some lime from the supermarket. Also to this dressing, we're going to add a little bit of garlic, a little bit of chilli. When I was working in London, I used to work in a kind of Asian fusion restaurant. We used to do lots of different cuisines, but with this kind of stuff for like Thai food or maybe like Vietnamese, if you're making a dipping sauce, you always want to have an equal quantity of sugary, sour, spicy, and salty. They're the ingredients, and you always want to make sure that they're nicely balanced. So when you make a dressing and you taste it, if the sugar is too much, then add a tiny little bit more of salt. If the sour is too much, add a little bit more of the sweet. You want to make sure that every single flavour you can taste individually, even though they're all in one dressing. Does that make sense? Let me know in the comments down below if it doesn't. The brown sugar, of course, if you have palm sugar, amazing, use that. But for the most part, we don't usually keep it in our cupboards in my house, so brown sugar does the job. Now for the dressing. I've got half a lime here. I'm actually going to use the little bit of zest that's left on there because limes are expensive and I want to get the most out of them. So, just a little bit there. Get all of that off. And then the juice of the lime. Now I've put that half a lime in, and I want there to be quite a lot of dressing, so I'll put in all the lime juice and then everything else I can amend to whether it needs to be sweet, sour, salty, to the amount of juice I have. Next I'm going to put in a lump of brown sugar. I'm going to put that in now and just add it to that lime juice because that will start to dissolve the sugar. If you have palm sugar, we could make this all in a pestle and mortar and it actually would be really great. You know, we could just grind it all up and you'd end up the most fantastic result. So we've got the sugar in there. We're going to add a teaspoon of fish sauce. This stuff's quite strong, so we'll just add a teaspoon, we'll taste it, and then if we need to add a bit more saltiness, then we'll add some more. And like I said before, just maybe half a teaspoon. I mean, very small amount because this stuff is really, really strong. So we'll add a little bit of that in there. And then we'll give it a little taste. You know what? I actually think that's about right. I can taste the salt, I can taste the sweet, I can taste the sour. It's all working well together. And then the last two things that we're going to use for this salad is a little bit of garlic and a little bit of chilli. Now, depending on how much chilli you like, how spicy the chilli is, it's always good to give it a little taste. I don't suspect that this will be very spicy. Oh, I was wrong. This chilli is so hot. Oh my God, it's actually making my eyes water. Was not expecting that. So, this chilli, very hot. I'm only going to add the smallest amount to this salad, so, whoa. Oh my God, that is so spicy. Usually the supermarket's chilies are rubbish. This thing, whoa. It's like a bird's eye red chili. It's so hot. I'm actually just going to add the smallest amount of chili to this because otherwise it's going to overpower everything. So, chop it up finely. Oh my God, honestly, it's so hot. I chop it up real fine. Now also as well, be careful when you're chopping chili because it's still going to be. So whatever you do, do not touch your eyes when chopping chili. Always make sure you give your hands a good wash after. So, holy moly, that's so spicy. I add this guy. And then squash the garlic. You can either use your microplane or you can just chop it up. Oh, my nose is running now. Or you can just chop it up. So, we want to make sure we chop it as fine as possible. And if you can't chop it that fine, then puree it. There's nothing kind of worse than chomping into a big bit of massive raw garlic. So we add that to the dressing. Ooh-wee. And there we have it. It's spicy, it's sweet, it's sour, it's all the things it should be. And then we're just going to pour this over the salad just before we start cooking the fish, just so that all the flavours can combine and everything's got a little bit of the dressing on it. We kind of want to like mush it up a little bit. Oh, mush, wrong word. We kind of want to massage it onto all of the vegetables and the noodles a little bit so that they all get covered in it. Anyway, now what we've got to do is cook the fish. I'm just going to make like a little marinade. This was just what I had in the fridge. So I had some tamarind paste. So I'm just going to put a little bit of tamarind in here. I'm going to add maybe a teaspoon of water. And all you want to do is just loosen the tamarind paste because it is quite thick. And then I'm just going to sit the fish in that, coat it a little bit. And while it sits there in that tamarind paste, I'm also going to give it a little bit of salt, which will start to firm up the fish a little bit, and also give it a little bit of a season all the way through before we then cook it. So I'm using quite the biggest portion of the hob here. I'm going to turn the gas on. As you can see, it is quite high because we want the pan to heat up. A little bit of oil. And what we want to do, we're going to make sure that oil coats all of the pan. We want to get a nice crust on this skin, so this, and they're quite thin, the pieces, so we're going to cook it at quite a high heat. If you're ever unsure about how hot your pan actually is, you can always just put a little bit in as a tester to see, is it hot enough? I think we're ready to go. As you can see, the fish has taken on a little bit of the colour from the tamarind. I've placed it flesh side down because that's the side that I want to get crisp and crunchy. It's not going to take very long for this fish to cook because it's only thin. So we're just going to cook it on one side, turn it over and then turn it off. Also, here's a classic. My spatula handle broke the other day. There it is, fabulous. As you can see here, the fish on the edge is starting to turn opaque, which tells me that it's cooking. I think we're about ready to turn. So always just be careful, get underneath it. Oh yeah. That looks so good. It always pays to just leave your fish on one side for a certain amount of time. Oh my God, this just looks so yum. And then add tamarind marinated fish. And to finish it off, some nice crunchy nuts. And there you have it. Pan-fried fish, noodle, vegetable salad. So delicious. I hope that yours turned out great too. Let me know in the comment section down below. See you next time.